and welcome back to my kitchen. Today we're making a creamy coffee cake and we're just going to start with 220 grams of softened unsalted butter. Next we're going to add 220 grams of granulated sugar and beat that together until it's light and fluffy. When your butter and sugar has been beaten together, add 4 eggs, one at a time, beating a little with each addition. I'm using medium eggs. So I'm just adding my eggs one at a time, beating a little in between each addition. This just helps to stop your mixture separating and looking a bit grainy. Next, I'm adding 3 tablespoons of instant coffee granules and 2 teaspoons of milk. And we're going to whisk that together. Next, I'm adding 220 grams of self-raising flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I just wanted to mention I forgot to grind my coffee granules, so I had to just let it sit in that mixture to fully dissolve in. It would be better to use coffee powder. And a good pinch of salt. If you're using salted butter, you can omit that step. And we're just going to fold this together as best as we can. So now, when you've folded your mixture together, it should look like this. It's a lovely brown and coffee smelling cake. We're going to add it to our dish. We want to use a 20 centimetre cake tin. I'm having to use a pot because unfortunately I don't have one. I like to stick a piece of parchment paper inside and just butter the edges of our dish. And we're going to cook this in 2 batches. I'm going to cook it half at a time. So I'm going to add half of my mixture here. If you're not sure whether you've halved it properly, I like to just weigh it just to be on the safe side. This is now ready for the oven. We're going to put it in a 180 degrees Celsius preheated oven. Because my oven, it heats a little higher than that, cakes tend to burn at that temperature, I'm going to do it at 160 degrees Celsius, otherwise you'll know your oven better. And we're going to cook it for around 15 to 20 minutes or until you can stick a knife in the centre of the cake and it comes out clear with no batter clinging to it. My second cake has finished baking. I did a knife test and it's come up clean with no batter clinging to the knife. I just want to say I ended up adding a little extra self-raising flour to my second batch of cake, or my second little cake. And I found with the first cake I made, it sunk a little in the middle. So I would recommend when you make this recipe, instead of adding 220 grams of self-raising flour, maybe use 300 grams and I think you'll get a better texture. And when your cake is done, tip it out onto a cooling rack just to help it cool a little faster before you frost it. Now you'll see with the first cake, it sort of dipped in the middle. This one with the extra flour just cooked a lot more evenly and the texture is so much spongier, like I can press it and it springs back quite nicely. Next I'm going to make the frosting for my coffee cake. I didn't feel like making a coffee buttercream frosting, I wanted something lighter, so I opted for a fresh cream frosting. So I have measured out 450 millilitres of double cream and 1.5 tablespoons of more instant coffee. And I'm just going to pour a few teaspoons in with my coffee granules. I'm going to mix that and just warm it slightly to help that coffee dissolve really nicely in that cream. I'm also going to dissolve 3 tablespoons of sugar in with my double cream and coffee mixture and let that all come together and dissolve nicely. When that has cooled down a little, then we can add that to our cream. Next we're going to whip up our double cream until it's quite thick and it shouldn't be runny at all. You want it to almost resemble a buttercream frosting mixture. I've whipped my cream until it's really quite thick, again because I want it to really resemble that buttercream frosting mixture. And now it's time for me to whisk in my coffee. and sugar back into this cream. I'm going to whisk that together and make sure it stays really nice and thick. Just taste your coffee cream, make sure there's enough coffee and sugar in there for your liking. And now we can get to the fun part of our cake, which is decorating. I have around 150 grams of apricot conserve or apricot jam. This is an optional step, but I really love the flavour it made. I saw it as an idea in a recipe and I really liked the look of it. I just want to give that little bit of sweetness and fruitiness through that lovely creamy coffee, fresh cream. So we're going to spread that on quite thick because I want to taste it through this coffee cake. After you spread your jam on, I added quite a thick layer. You can add as much or as little as you like. We're going to spread some of our double cream mixture onto here. I left my double cream in the fridge up until I was ready to use it and just gently spread it out as best as you can. It doesn't have to look perfect because we're going to sandwich another layer of cake on top anyway. And then you can sandwich your other cake on top. I'm just using a bit of cling film to help me be able to hold that. It doesn't have to look pretty because remember, you're not really going to see the inside once we're done with this. And try to get it as central as you can. And I like to just press it down very slightly just to make sure it's fully wedged on there. And we're going to spread the remainder of our double cream onto the rest of this cake. Get it into a nice thick layer so you can really taste all that coffee on there. And make sure you spread a little cream to the edges of this cake as well. You want to hide up those imperfections that you can see in the middle. And try to smooth it out as best as you can with a knife or a palette knife. When you've spread your cream on, we're going to add some walnuts. So I've roasted some walnuts in a 180°C oven for around 5 minutes. When your roasted walnuts have cooled, you can then spread them around your cake, around the edges. I like to start from the outer edges and just work my way around. I like to roast them first. I feel like it gets rid of that softness that sometimes walnuts can have, and it just gives it a really lovely flavour. And that's all there is to it. Put it in the fridge to cool if you're going to serve it later. But if you enjoyed the recipe, please do leave a like, subscribe and click that notification bell. But before you leave, I'm going to cut a little slice just so we can see what the inner crumb of this cake looks like. I like my coffee cakes to be slightly hefty almost, not too spongy, because I want it to hold up to the buttercream or double cream frosting. And look at that. My cutting skills leave a little to be desired, but you can see how delicious those crumbs are. The sponge just really springs back. I can smell all that coffee, and you've got a bit of that jam to offset any of that bitterness that that coffee can give. And thank you for watching.